Hi, I'm Ben, an animator.
Hi, I'm Jessica Dahl, also an animator.
And I'm Lauren, a third animator.
And
Yeah!
from the keys to the breakdowns and everything in between, I want to welcome the DIY Animation Show to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our part 2 episode with the DIY Animation Show, and I am pumped. In the first part, if you guys didn't get a chance to hear it yet, I was able to talk with Lauren and Jess about what interests them about animation and kind of how their DIY Animation Show podcast came about. So if you haven't heard that yet, go back and check it out. In this second part, we talk about how Lauren and Jess make their show, and they're really open about it. It's really great for anyone who's looking at starting their own podcast. We also talk about how they're inspired by their guests in many different ways, but one of them just being to go out and do it, to make their own stuff, which is why they have the DIY Animation Show. And lastly, we talk about animation, like all of their art forms, as a means of expression. And Lauren and Jess get into talking about their personal work as well, and their epic podcast, because season 4 is up. So we talk about that a little bit in the episode. We recorded this right before the season broke, but it's out now. So check out season 4. They have their latest interview with Kate Sullivan, who did the Sailor Moon fan animation. It's really great. So check out their show. We'll have links to it on my website and on YouTube, of course, as well as we'll shout it out at the end of the episode. So I hope you guys enjoy my interview, part 2, with Lauren and Jess of the DIY Animation Show. We got to transition to the DIY Animation Show and expanding that part of your guys' lives as well. So we heard about how it came about, but how do you balance doing your own personal art and animation and running this super successful, super high production value show? I mean, how do you guys do it?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Yes, good answer.
So, yeah, in all seriousness, it's a lot of just kind of reassessing where we're at, time of year, or if a new thing happens, like if one of us gets a new job or anything like that. We'll have to talk about our schedules and be like, okay, what's the best day for us to meet up on? Da, 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 da. I would say that the biggest thing that helps out is just would be scheduling. As it is right now, for the most part, we meet once a week and, have our meeting once a week and have our tasks that we need to get done in that week and everything like that. But,
and what do those tasks entail?
It varies. It depends on if we're in pre-production, production, or post-production, or even prepping for an interview. So, which if you want to, I don't know, how detailed you want to get with the stuff, but we can get nitty gritty if you want, or we can
Let's
give
do
a general
it.
overview. All right. All right. So let's say that, or for that matter, let's say that we're prepping for a new season, and we're like, oh, we want to reach out to people, to people that we potentially want to interview. How do we want to go about it? So we'll talk a lot about just different artists and animators that we found. We'll try to get a nice as it is right now. We'll have about 3 to 4 guests in the season, because usually as it is right now, the parts one guest will have 2 episodes. So it'll be a part 1 and a part 2, and that'll there are 2 episodes that will cover 2 months. And so what we'll do is we will reach out to, how many would you say, Lauren? Maybe 3 to 5 at a time if we're trying to fill a season's worth of guests. Do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. We're kind of, it's the idea that you've got enough to be able to record interviews for the next few months,
Right.
But also have some in reserve because not everybody will be available at that time. So
yeah, we try to do things in blocks so that we're not too spread out. we tried doing this before where like maybe we were like editing 2 shows at a time, or we have like, oh, we have an interview and we're also editing and we also have this coming up. And and what we found was that was too much. It was just like, there was just ping ponging, just mentally and like physically, and it's just like, oh my gosh, we're both drained. Why? Oh, that's right, because we're trying to do like 10 things when we should probably be doing like 3. And so as it is right now, like we do just everything like one thing at a time. It's a lot easier. We get a lot more done. So we'll look for artists and animators that we're excited about, that we think, and that we also think our listeners would like really enjoy like listening and hearing about their experience. And there's so many cool people out there.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. Just like you guys.
Thanks,
right? Or, it's such a struggle because it's just like, oh, I just want to interview everybody right now. And
it's true.
So we'll reach out to people that we think would all like pair well in a season. So we'll divide that up either by themes, or maybe we'll have like variations, just all that stuff. We reach out to them via email. Hopefully we get something scheduled. And let's say that someone gets back and they're like, yeah, I am available for an interview. We'll say, great. And we'll set a date with them. And it's usually like, if we can, a few weeks in advance. And then after that, it's prep time. Yeah. We'll do our research. We'll because we'll already know some things about them, of course, but we'll do like more thorough investigation about like what are their latest projects, like how did they first get started, just like to give us a foundation of things that and to help us figure out like what do we really want to be asking them like while they're on the show. Lauren and I talked about it, that it's really important to us that each interview, like everybody is unique and everyone has their own like individual and unique paths for like why they're in animation, how they got here, what they're doing. So we want to treat everybody as such. And so just with all of that, we'll develop a list of questions that we want to ask during the interview, while leaving like enough for there to just be like general talking and things, because there are always really cool surprises like topic wise that happen during interviews. So
and Jess is the queen at that. She is, oh my goodness, you're so good at just kind of like latching on to something that a guest has said and following it through to the next bit of rabbit hole, and we end up with really, really great answers because of that.
Thanks, man. Well, likewise for Lauren. Like, so I think we both balance each other out really well, because Lauren is really great at summarizing and being like, oh, so do you mean? And she'll pull out the like golden nugget of what they've just said. Like, wow, yeah, that's like it, man.
No, it's too true. I mean, being a fan of the podcast, I completely see where you guys like. I see that happening in both you guys' questions and like summaries and stuff. It's so awesome. Like, you guys doing a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you, Ben.
It's worked out very nicely. We'll meet with the guest on we'll usually meet with them on Skype. If for whatever reason they can't meet on Skype, then we'll work out something there, but for the most part, meet on Skype. We'll have MP3 Skype recorder going, or like Pamela was another recording program that we used for a while. And that was when we first started. And
she was not very reliable, Pamela, for us.
Pamela was a little finicky. And she liked to do her own things every now and then. So so
we all have friends like that.
Yeah. But we've been using MP3 Skype recorder for probably a couple of years now, and that's been a very that's been a really nice one. That's been a good one.
Yeah. And I think it's just a free download, isn't it? It's nothing super fancy.
Yeah, free things are great.
Yeah. No, really. I mean, and just thinking about DIY animation, we're living at such an amazing time for anyone to make their own project, including a podcast. So that's awesome that you guys like took advantage of that and continue to. That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's felt really good.
Yeah, so once we've recorded the interview, we have it split into two channels. So it will be whoever's doing the recording will be on one channel, and then the other of us and the guest will be on the other, so that we can sort of tweak timing a little bit and get that kind of, straightened up in places. Because obviously, me and Jess, and usually the guest being different places on the planet, you sometimes get delays. So it's nice to be able to have that tweakability.
Yeah.
So that's
Just
super
like that
handy.
timing thing we were talking about earlier with Jess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get the interview. We just use Audition to edit our interviews. It's quite a nice Adobe one. It's pretty simple and straightforward to use. Neither of us had used it until that point, and we were just like, yeah, you can just kind of dive in and get the hang of it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a case of listening through the raw recording. We tend to take notes on kind of just generally, so we've got a record of what we talk about. Because obviously, if it's audio, you can't just at a glance be like, oh yeah, that we talk about such and such. My memory in
Yeah.
particular is not great, so I like to have a written record of kind of topics we touch on, and we just kind of identify places with time codes of bits that we need to cut out. So if I'm like, Jess, should we ask this question next? I know exactly where that is in the recording.
Right.
I can just grab that and chuck it in the cutting floor
Yeah.
section. And then really it's just a process of going through, and for our editing style, we've become a bit more relaxed over the years. Just because editing takes such a long time. But really it's a case of taking out the bits that we definitely don't need, and just tightening up the flow of conversation overall. So hopefully when the listener listens to it, it sounds like a free-flowing conversation, that you're not getting caught up on long pauses where people are thinking about what to say next, which is a completely normal part of conversation. But I've just found that if you're physically there in the same place as someone, those pauses are fine and they make total sense, but they're magnified somehow when you're listening to a recording.
Yeah.
So
It's so true. So
yeah,
true.
so it's just kind of a case of just tightening things up and making it as easy to listen to as possible, really, and making sure that the guest as well, of course, is presented in their best light. Because not everybody feels confident behind the microphone, and it's nice to be able to have that facility of people feeling like they can retake their answers, or I messed that bit up, can I say it again? And it just makes the whole experience much better, I think, for the guest as well. So yeah, so we go through the editing. If I've edited, I'll put up a version of it in Dropbox. That's how we share our files. Jess will listen to it and she'll come back to me with any fixes, like, oh, I think we need a bit more of a pause here, or perhaps this section would actually be better in the second part of the interview. So we'll tend to edit part one first and part two separately. So we'll each take a part to edit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then if the interview's all good to go, we'll write bookends. So that's the introduction, introducing our guest. And then the outro, where we're like, that was super awesome. And give all the kind of guest social details and stuff. And then we'll edit those. And then we sort of mix and assemble it in Audition again, with all the component parts. So we've got our pre-roll, which is like our music introduction bit. Then we've got the introduction to the interview, various music stings, the interview itself. Then we have the outro. Then we have the post-roll, which is, you've been listening to the DIY animation show with our music. And then we'll usually find some kind of blooper at the end, because it always happens, and they're just super fun to relive. They're too good to be buried away, it never hurts. So all our guests have been really good about it, actually, as well. Nobody's ever come back and be like, I can't believe you put that about me.
Oh, those are my favorite parts almost, just because
Yeah.
it feels like, oh, I'm actually like hanging out with you, you know?
Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool. And then I assume, hosting it and getting it out there for everyone to listen to, how does that go down?
So for that, we use SoundCloud. We started off with their free one, which is limited to
like 3 episodes or something like
think
that.
so.
Yeah.
So we wanted people to be able to access old episodes as well. So I think we're paying for their cheapest level of membership, which allows us to have everything there. And it also provides you with a little feed thing that I can't remember the name of. Maybe it's just the feed URL. Probably is. And
I
from
don't
that,
understand technology, so I'll just nod. You guys can't see it. I'm just nodding like, yeah, I get it. And like
that's
instead I'm
exactly
like,
what it
is.
Yeah, I mean, me and Jess, we've been kind of learning bits and pieces as well, because obviously we had the OA team who kind of took care of all that scientific, technological whatnot. So we're just kind of making the simplest version of it for ourselves as we can. And then with that feed URL, you can plug it into your free iTunes account, and we're on Spotify as well. And they were just both situations where you submit the feed, and someone gets back to you and just like, yeah, your podcast's on iTunes now. Your podcast is on Spotify, and it's really simple.
Like, cool.
Yeah. So SoundCloud hosts the episodes themselves, and that is really easy to use. You just upload it, put a bit of blurb about it, change the title, change the album art if you want to. You can put things into playlists, which is really nice. And then we write the blog post and embed the SoundCloud player on the blog post, and release it into the world.
Yes, let those podcasts free. Fly, spread your wings. Well, that's so awesome.
Oh, I just want to jump in, and then I think it's also important to note that once the podcast is out, like it's that's not it. Usually, what we do, like the meeting or two before the episode release, is that we also get all of our social media together. So because we want to, because as you probably know, but like when you have a new episode coming out, you want to make sure that promotion for it is like consistent and that you get it in front of people. So we'll use Buffer a lot of times for that, so that we get our stuff out on Twitter, Facebook, and then Instagram. We'll manually put those out on certain days, and we'll have like we have our set schedule with like what do we want to say on these days, what do we want to like, what part of the podcast do we want to promote on these days, and so on and so forth. That way, just make sure that like engagement on the podcast stays up, and that like you'll also catch people at different times, because not everybody is going to see it first thing on Wednesday necessarily. Maybe they'll catch it on like Friday when they're off of work, and they're like, oh, animation podcast, or maybe like Monday on their commute or something. So yeah, so it's one of those things that like once it's out, like yeah, you got that work done, and now you have just a little bit more to go.
Yeah, well, and it's cool for me to hear about too that you guys, you really have it blocked out. Like it is a whole production that you're managing, and even up to social media. I think that's super cool that you're planning exactly what you're going to say. I mean, I love your guys' summaries in the episodes of being like, this is what we're going to talk about. And I'm just like pumped at the beginning. I'm just like, yeah, I want to hear about that. Yeah. So I think it's super cool that you guys have taken the time, and it is a lot of time to put it all together, even just writing blog posts and sharing show notes, links, and things like that. I don't even think I have a question. This is that part I'll edit out like you guys are talking about. It's just more like me geeking out about, oh man, this show's great.
Oh, thanks, man. No, if there's one thing that we love, it is geeking out about stuff. So that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, and I guess what I will transition into that is because the podcasting takes so much time, do you find you get inspired by the guests and so you're like, no, I got to go animate, and you force yourself to it? Or do you animate less because you're having to do all this planning and work for the podcast?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good question.
I think certainly for myself, I found that I've kind of got a three item limit. So one of them is work, whether that's full time in a studio or freelance, or if it's a big personal project that I happen to be doing at the time that takes up most of my time. Then I've got the podcast is a secondary one, and then a tertiary one is just kind of whatever other little creative projects I have in the background. So I find that whenever we interview people, I'm always instantly super pumped and I want to start making something, and it's usually right there and then, but because of the time difference it's at 10 o'clock at night and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I can't start working now because otherwise I won't go to sleep and I've got work tomorrow.
Oh man.
But it's so exciting to, feel that excitement and energy and, really wanting to capitalize on it. And so I find that sometimes it does filter through, and I think, I should start that, project that I've been wanting to do for ages. And other times I just have to satisfy myself that there aren't enough hours in the day. But by being able to edit the episode and get it out there, that helps satisfy some of that creative itch,
Right.
I suppose. Because
it's an
it
art
also
in
means
itself.
Exactly, yeah. And you kind of get to relive all the cool stuff that the guest has very kindly shared with us. And I just get so thrilled at the prospect that we get to share this knowledge with other people and that they will benefit from it as well. So if I can't make my own stuff, then putting the episode out there is just as good for me. I don't know about you, Jess.
No, I think yeah, it goes back and forth. It also kind of depends on what's going on at the time. Because there will be the podcast for sure, and then there will be freelance work, and then recently I also just I got another part-time job just to like bring in some extra money. So now there's that too, and then you put trying to like exercise and just like life things, and it's just like, oh man, that can be a lot of stuff if you're not careful.
Who has time for that?
Right? Who has time for like healthy things in life? What even? And but in all seriousness, it's just I do a similar thing where I have maybe like my 2 or 3 main items on a list per day, and just depending on deadlines, I'll be like, okay, so like this has to be the priority today, and maybe like the podcast goes on the back burner for the day. But the next day it's like, okay, this is going to be like podcast is going to be priority for the day because this needs to be done by this date that Lauren and I have specified to make sure that like production stays in flow and all of that. Plus I got my work done the day before and so on and so forth. So it's just kind of it's a little bit of juggling, but I found that if I have goals for let's say that like a lot of times I'll have maybe like 2, maybe 3 main goals for the week that I want to hit. And if I can get most of those, then I feel really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's really nice because in that way, then it's also like, then my days have like started feeling like less hectic because I'm not like, I have to get everything done today. And it's more just like, okay. Yeah, it's like, no, it's okay. There's flexibility, and you're going to stop working at 7 because you're going to have a life, and that's good, and that needs to happen. And it's just so it's been really important to establish like nice established boundaries with things just to make sure that it's really fun to work. But also, like, there's a limit to that too. So that's how I do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's cool too, and to kind of do up and coming artist podcast cheesy transition. I mean, it's kind of an X sheet of your life, right? And like getting your keys down and what's important, and then planning it all out. I think that's super cool.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So to transition it, because you guys have had so many amazing guests on your show, and all of them just have brought so much great insight. So for the time when you are able to work on your own personal animation, what are some kind of insights that have stuck out to you from your guests that you've been able to implement in your work?
A lot. It's really funny because it also seems like whenever we work on an episode that like we had recorded previously, and I was like, okay, now we're getting to editing it and taking notes, there's almost always something that is like really like weirdly relevant to like something like we'll be experiencing at the time.
So true.
Yeah.
we just we're working on an episode right now, and there's a big section about demo reels in there, and I'm working on cutting together a new reel, and I'm like, this is all really important stuff. This is great.
This is just what I needed.
This is literally just what I needed. I think the biggest thing that has stuck out to me is just with everything. That's really just kind of a general one. Is it's honestly seeing people working on their own stuff and just getting it done and putting it out there, and how there's so many different ways that you can do different projects, and just you do it in the way that works for you. And I know that, and again, I know that's kind of a general thing.
It's the DIY way, though.
It's literally the DIY way, and I think that is truly the most inspiring thing that I've seen. Just like with all of the guests, is they all just made it happen. And what I'm reminded of each time is a good reminder is that like they didn't know where it was going to take them, and like by finishing these projects and getting them out there, or pursuing these things that they love, or these topics that are very important to them, and just seeing how it's impacted other people and themselves, and that and just being reminded that you can't predict what your project is going to do, you can only make it, is just, that means so much to me. And they're all just such great people, and I love them. So
I think I'm the same. I can't. Well, actually, I was going to say I can't just pick one, because it is that sort of all pervasive spirit of just making it happen. Doing what you can with what you have available to you. But I think one of the really big things that I think. Certainly all of our guests have had it, but I think Jim Lujan was the one who really...
Love that episode.
So he's just amazing. The big thing I took away from him was swagger. It's just like, own the thing that you're making. Do it the way that you do it. And that's completely brilliant. I mean, more than that, that's exactly what you should be doing. Don't worry about how other people are doing things. If that's the way that you do it, then that's the way you should do it. And so I just find that really encouraging, I think. And I mean, all of our guests embody that in one way or another. They've all got their own individual takes on things and different experiences. But yeah, I think that was one of the really formative interviews, I think, because Jim was just so open about it. It's like, this is what I make and how I make it. So there.
Oh yeah, that's so awesome. And it's funny, if I had to choose a favorite of you guys' episodes, that's what I would have said too. It's kind of
right.
It's awesome that you brought that up.
So good. I mean, the guy's so good and so humble and just chill about everything. You know?
He's just so self-assured about himself and what he's making. I love it. I hope I get to be that cool one day.
Oh, well, in my book, you guys are that cool. And not only that, you guys have your own swagger.
Oh, thanks, man.
Well, and that's cool, too, that you guys are talking about just going out there and making it happen. It kind of ties it all the way back to, I mean, Chris Oatley, getting you guys like, hey, why don't you guys just make a podcast? I think that's super cool to see, that's playing out not only in your guys' podcast, but in your own work. I think that's super cool and inspiring for anybody listening to just go out and do it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's it's kind of the core tenet really of DIY animation, is just making it happen however you can. And the fact that you have made it happen is a huge achievement, whether or not it lines up to what you initially wanted it to be. Just the fact that you are trying and giving it a go and you've done it is, I mean, it deserves huge high fives. And I wish I could high five everybody in real life who's just
across the world, high fives. Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, and speaking of that, so you guys are doing your own work, which is great. And this is kind of our last question before we get into, where people can check out the podcast and check out your personal work. But as you go into the future, what are some of your goals of just, all right, jumping in and making your own stuff? What are things you guys want to do?
So what's funny is I've been reassessing a lot of that lately, and so just like about like what kind of art do I want to be making, and what kind of work do I want to be doing, and all of that. And I realized that I haven't really done any just purely fun work for myself in forever. So I've enjoyed all the work that I've done, like up to date, and I really like or love how most of it has turned out. And but in terms of just making like fun work, it's been a while. So my short-term goal right now is that I'm actually going to take a break for a little bit. I'm wrapping up my commissions and certain projects, and probably going to take a break just for, I don't know how long. I'm kind of just thinking a couple weeks right now, just like not drawing and doing anything art related, really.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so just kind of like to recalibrate. But that being said, long-term goals in the future, like I just really want to. I want to do a series of gifts for this program that I was a part of in Oklahoma. That's all centered around nature and all of that. And I'm going to be moving out of Oklahoma sometime next year. But yeah, so this will kind of be like my love letter to Oklahoma, and I want to experiment with making a series of gifts that also act as beats and not a storyboard, but kind of like I really wanted this to be like a longer animated project, and I was like, oh, this would be like 2.5 to 3 minutes, and I was like, and then later I was like, yes, you need to shorten this, just make this. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, you need to get this done. Come on now. And so I was like, okay, well, like. That way it can be the best of both worlds, because I want to get some gifts done, and then I can also illustrate them a little bit more, and but I can still follow a story. So that'll be the next project after that. And really, long-term goals after that, I'm really not sure. So many things have happened career-wise that I never really expected. All that I know is that I really want to make some. I just want to tell animated stories. And that I write or that my friends write, and then that's the long-term goal, really.
Would that be with Lucky Bone, or would that just be your own personal, like in terms of following people's stories and animating those?
A little bit of both. I have some personal stories that like I've been wanting to animate or like make some like little comics out of, or Lucky Bone. Like we also have some things in house at Lucky Bone that we want to pitch around, or as well as some creative shorts that are really like really like them. And so yeah, it's just there's so many cool and inspiring things out there that I want to be a part of, and then also that I want to tell from my own life. And I almost kind of don't want to try planning it out anymore. I just want to take it a step at a time and see like, what do I want to make now? And then make it. Kind of sort of long-term goals, but also kind of sort of not really too.
Yeah. So, well, it's like, I think it's cool to hear about, like, you have a piece about it where it's like, what comes my way, then I'll tackle it at that point. But until then, I'm just going to coast and do my thing. I think that's a really cool place to be, because I don't know, for me, I think getting into the industry, and this is why I love DIY podcast, your guys' show, because it's so good. But like that was a driver for a long time, and it's like discouraging,
Yeah.
So it's cool when it's like just let it come and do what you enjoy. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'd love to be a part of the industry more so in terms of like, I'd love to work on a show or a movie or a game, even just something. But just again, I was listening to another podcast the other day too. It was 3 Point Perspective. It's an illustration podcast with Will Terry, Jake Parker, and Lee White, and they were talking in there about like basically all these different like not odd jobs, but basically like non-industry quote unquote like art jobs that are out there, and they were talking about it from an illustration standpoint, like doing like museum murals and or like or like landing a billboard illustration out of nowhere, and like
Yeah.
all these like super cool things. And I was like, man, how can that apply to animation? Dude, I want to give that a go. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, so there are so many cool things out there that we can't even visualize necessarily. And so I'm just kind of like, I'm really excited at the prospect of like you got to hustle, so to speak, and you have to like put yourself out there and like and try to make it happen. Like there is a little bit of planning in that regard, but it's more just like I just want to like grow as a person, and that will affect my animation instead of having animation lead me into like becoming somebody, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like we talked about at the beginning. It's like it's letting your life kind of fill out the animation instead of the other way around.
Exactly. Like I love animation, but animation is also just a tool for expression. Like it comes down to like, what are you wanting to express? Like yourself as a person, these characters, other people's stories, beauty, maybe despair. Like there's so many things, and animation is a great tool for like discovering more about those things and getting to know them better and share them. And it kind of helps keep a healthy perspective on it too, in a way. So it's not unattainable, but it's a tool. And I feel like that's very freeing to keep in mind. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And I mean, it's just like we've been talking about throughout, which I think is so cool. And that you guys have this show about doing it yourself. It's like what works for you and like what you want to say drives that project instead of, oh, we got to make that $1 million or whatever. You know, I think that's really awesome. And to transition over to Lauren, what about you in terms of where you want to take your art in the future?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to Jess's in the respect of just kind of animation being a mode of expression. In terms of animation projects, I would just really like to keep experimenting, and I have a real affinity for GIFs at the minute. I really love how small and kind of bite-sized they are. You can make them as complex or simple as you want. And what I really love about them is kind of how they share little moments and little snippets of stories. So I definitely want to make some more of those, specifically some more Sid and Squid GIFs. In the future, I'd love to be able to do maybe something a little bit longer form with Sid and Squid because I just love them so much. I don't know what it would be.
I want it to be a show.
That would be so cool. So maybe one day. That would be super exciting. And then on top of that, I've been really, really into pixel art and animation recently.
Oh yeah.
So I've dabbled my toes in it and I really love it. So I'd like to experiment a bit more with that. But I think generally I just want to feel like I've lived a creative life, whatever kind of format that takes. So I also like sewing, I like weaving, and I like drawing plants. Those are some other things that I enjoy doing, and I just really want to feel like I have kind of done those to their fullest. I feel like I've spent a lot of time not drawing. It's funny, Jess saying that she wants to take a break from drawing for 2 weeks because she draws every day. I draw maybe once a month, in all honesty.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it comes to. You know, apart from whatever you do at work, you know, I'm not one of those people who does like wind down drawings before bed or, you know, animates on something every day. I just don't have the mental or creative energy for that all the time. But that being but that being said, I'd like to be able to incorporate that more in because I think part of that has stemmed from kind of that fear of the blank page and my art it's not where I want it to be. And actually over the last few years I've kind of allowed myself those moments of drawing or, you know, trying something out, and actually they've turned out better than I expected. And have also taught me to love my artistic voice as it is rather than trying to make it more like someone else's. Taking elements of other people's cool stuff that I want to incorporate and feels natural, but kind of being able to look at my art in whatever form it takes and feel like, yeah, that is 100% me. So I'd like for making art to become more kind of natural output type thing, I suppose. But I know that whatever form it takes, I will always be doing it because I love it so much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I think that's cool too to like kind of wrap it all together. Like like I had said at the beginning, your guys' genuineness that I hear in your podcast and when you guys talk about animation and asking guest questions, it's so not only just appealing but inspiring. The self-expression that you guys give in your show as well as in your work is just it really is, it elevates your work to the next level. Yeah, it's more than just like we were talking about earlier, cool things with timing or cool things with spacing or acting or silhouette or anything like that. It puts it into that personal space, and you guys putting your life into it lets all of us who are your fans and hopefully one day your friends to like get to know you guys and to see that self-expression. So that's so awesome. It's super cool.
Oh, thank you so much, Ben. That is just amazing, and I'm so glad that is communicated, because I think I might have said before we started recording, sometimes me and Jess sit there and we're just like, are we just too excitable? Should we be following this rabbit hole? And are we doing it well enough? And so it's really encouraging for us to hear that you really enjoy what we're making. It just makes it super duper cool. And you're the best, Ben. Thank you so much.
Oh man, oh no, you guys are the best. So, so that we can wrap it up, now that we've heard about your goals for your personal work, which so good, and I love seeing how you guys are putting your life into do-it-yourself animation. For people who are interested in doing their own work, and wanting to learn about, well, how can I even start creating my own animation? Where can they go to check out your epic podcast, especially as it's going into season 4? Shout out. Hey,
Season 4!
Oh my goodness. Well, we've got the website, which is diyanimation.show. So you'll find absolutely everything on there. And if you want to follow along on our social channels, we're on Instagram and Twitter at DIYA Show. So it's the same handle for both of those. And then you can also search on Facebook, The DIY Animation Show, and you'll find us there. And then in terms of listening platforms, we're on Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone would like to support the show, we also have a Ko-fi. So that's just ko-fi.com/DIYA show. If anyone would like to throw a Ko-fi our way.
Yeah, much appreciated. And it will all go towards directly funding the running of the DIY animation show. Exciting things like hosting costs for the blog, the SoundCloud subscription, things like that. So it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and I hope everyone can go on and check it out, because the show, like I've been saying throughout, and I want to make it clear to everyone, is absolutely fantastic. I love the show. Everyone is listening, please go support these guys because their work is great. And then before we end it here, since we've been talking about imbuing life from our own experiences into our own work, where can our listeners go to check out your guys' personal work online?
Lauren, would you like to go first?
As you look up your Instagram handle, what was that again? Yeah.
Wait, how did I spell it? Yeah, so I'm probably most active really on Instagram. I try to Twitter, which means one tweet every 6 months when I open it up and I'm like, oh, so much cool stuff. But so Instagram is probably the best one for me, right? And I am at _Lonnydon. So that's _LONNYDON. And oh my gosh, we met up with a friend at Denver Pop Culture Con. And he was like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you in person." He was an ex-OA person as well. And it was like, "Oh, yeah, I think I follow you on Instagram. You post a lot of pictures of the beach." I was like, "Oh, I do, don't I?" So I tried to put some more artistic endeavors on there now as well. But if you ever want pictures of the beach, you know where to come. So
Well, that's photography. Hey, this is the Up and Coming Artist podcast. All the arts accepted here.
hooray! But yeah, I do also have you can have those highlights for Instagram
Yes.
stories and you save them. I've got one of those now for all my Sid and Squid bits and pieces, so I'm trying to build that up. Whenever I work on it,
Cool.
I'll add something to it. So if you want to check some of that out, that's on there too.
That's what I'm doing after this interview.
Ah! Oh, and then for my stuff, my website is jessdoll.com. That's JESSDOLL. And then I'm also primarily on Instagram, and I am also the same. I have a Twitter. I'm never really on Twitter.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm just a stalker on Twitter. I just follow people. I never like retweet or anything.
Right?
yeah, I just like, oh my gosh. And then, but yeah, so my Instagram is JessDoll24. So JESSDOLL and then 24. And yeah, so my Facebook page is Jessica Doll Art. And I'll post more like finished pieces there. My Instagram just has a general mill of like work in progress drawings, finished stuff, photos, just that whole shebang.
Oh, some great illustrations. I love the colors you're using on there.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Again, there's so much cool art to do out there, and like we're to try out. It just, man.
There's just not enough hours in the day. I suppose I should probably give my official sensible website as well, which is lauramorse.co.uk. So it doesn't get updated very often, but I feel like that's something that everybody should have. So there it is.
Yeah, that's good. The fact that you actually have a website is impressive.
I don't know. It always in my mind, I'm always like, man, they have their own website. Man, they must really be somebody. Yeah. As if I
Not
had any
really.
doubts before, but that just sets it over the edge.
No, it's just from point of, well, for me it was for freelancing. I was just like, well, I'm not going to get any jobs if I'm not out there. So
Yeah, so good. Well, it's been so fun for me to be able to talk to you guys. I hope I haven't geeked out on you too much. I just love the show,
Oh, it's fine. It's been a ton of fun geeking out with you. So, and we're so glad that you like the show, and it's been great to meet you, and it's been fabulous. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Yeah, I know. We'll
been
have to.
so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll have to explode the universe again, kind of like when you guys met in real life. We'll just have to all meet up sometime and, worlds collide. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Let me tell you that as sunshiny and sparkly as Jess is on audio, she is 5 million times more shiny and sparkly and joyful in person. So
Oh, you guys are both great. Oh my gosh, so much fun to talk to you guys.
Hey guys, it's me, Christian. Psych, it's still Ben. Thanks again, guys, for listening to this epic episode. As you could tell, Christian wasn't here again, but that's okay because I had a Lauren and Jess, fantastic hosts of the DIY animation show. So pumped. So, as we talked about at the ending there, I hope that everyone can check out the show. It's really fantastic. They just started to put up episodes for season 4. So, check out the show at DIYanimation.show, or you can also find them on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. And then, while you're at it, check out Lauren and Jess's personal work so you can see some Sid and Squid epicness on Lauren's Instagram, which is _LonnieDon, or you can also check it out on her website, which is laurenmorris.co.uk, and check out some epic Lucky Bone animation from Jess on Instagram at JessDoll24, or on her website, which is jessdoll.com. And oh, it's always such a good time to talk about animation. I had such a blast. Um, I do have to say, the day that we recorded this, just to give some context for people listening, while we were recording this interview, the news broke that Richard Williams had passed away. And for anyone who knows about animation, I'm sure they know who Richard Williams is. If you don't, he's a fantastic British animator who not only was the animation director for films such as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Thief and the Cobbler, but also just a fantastic teacher of animation. And his book, I always have to laugh about. It's like up there with The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson as like kind of the animator 10 Commandments. This is great image of like Moses coming down the mountain from the film The 10 Commandments, with The Illusion of Life in one hand on one tablet and Richard Williams' book The Animation Survival Kit in the other hand. And it is just a fantastic image, and it's so true. I work at Stupid Buddy Studios, which for everyone listening is a stop motion studio. And I am often going around the stages and seeing other animators still reading Richard Williams' book to this day to help grow their animation. And these are professionals. Like, it isn't just students, reading his work, but professionals in the industry seeking to grow their skills, continue to read Richard Williams' book, and he'll be forever missed by everyone in the animation community. But speaking of animation, there was also some super epic and exciting stuff going on just this past weekend, as all of you would be aware. Lightbox Animation Expo, which was started by Bobby Chu, was just this weekend. I wasn't able to go, like I said in the last episode. However, it looks like it was a really epic time, and I hope that everybody who was able to go shares with me how it was, or shares online. It looks like it was a really epic time. Let me know how it went. And as I mentioned in our last episode, and as you guys noticed, Christian wasn't here. So there's something that I want to share with all you guys on the podcast. It's going to be a new exciting thing that's coming up. Christian has just been busy and hasn't been able to come on, and that's totally okay, because that opens up for guest hosts. So this is something that I'm hopefully going to start introducing on the podcast. We'll see if it actually happens or not. But hopefully getting some of you guys as guest hosts. And I'm sure that all of you listening are amazing artists yourselves. So we'll be able to talk to you about what you do, but also ask questions of the guests who are coming on. We'll see if this works. Not sure yet. It's kind of an experiment. But since Christian's busy, I just thought, well, this might be fun. So we'll definitely do that. And so, like I said, everyone check out the DIY Animation Show. It's a fantastic podcast. I've been listening to it on my drives to work. And as a teaser for our next episode, there's another podcast that all of you guys should also check out called the DC Detectives Podcast. And it is run by a good friend of mine named John Solito and his friend Matt. John writes his own comic called Veritas, and everyone go check it out online, veritascomic.com. You can read the comic and then check out our next episode, in which I interview John talking about how he writes his own graphic novel. So stay tuned. And in whatever area of art you enjoy, just like Jess and Lauren were talking about, keep on creating.